Hi everyone, I'm Shelly and you're watching There's No Place Like Home. I'm back with another question and narrative video, and today's topic is this: I blame Left Behind. Today I'm going to share with you two comments from the same person, and they both made me instantly think of the Left Behind series. And so I'm also hoping to at least briefly answer the commenter's question, but I think that if you do not have the proper perspective of audience relevance when it comes to the book of Revelation, you're just not going to get it. Were the Most High and the Messiah ignorant of all the things which would develop with the express purpose of causing billions of people to stumble, corrupting their minds, feeding them with false history, denying the truth of scriptures, and hoping to turn people away from the kingdom? So I'm going to stop right there. And now, the person commenting here obviously does not believe in full preterism, but they also believe that the book of Revelation was talking about a judgment of the entire world and not just a judgment of Israel, Old Covenant Israel, which, the distinction is very, very important because the commenter is talking about billions of people to stumble, corrupting their minds, feeding them with false history. So basically talking about a lot of the stuff that goes on in the world today. But it is very, very, very important. First of all, no, the Messiah is not ignorant of these things. But the fact is that the book of Revelation was not about these things. In the Days of Vengeance, David Chilton, he said this very well. Like many other biblical prophecies, the book of Revelation is a prophecy of covenant wrath against apostate Israel, which irrevocably turned away from the covenant in her rejection of Christ. And like many other biblical prophecies, the book of Revelation is written in the form of the covenant lawsuit, with 5 parts conforming to the treaty structure of the covenant. So the things that are going on right now are irrelevant to the book of Revelation. Now I'm going to just go to the next paragraph. Again, I take you to the end of Revelation chapter 13, which talks about the worship of a talking image, the consequences of which affect one's chances of participating in the first resurrection. Explain, when before 70 AD did this take place? Well, if we believe what Jesus said about things happening in his generation, then we also have to accept that, yes, this did happen. If not in exactly 70 AD, it happened in Jesus's generation, just like he said. Now, it sounds like I'm like making a runaround of this, but I'll read this to you really quickly. Let's see. Okay, Revelation 13. And it was allowed to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast might even speak and might cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. So it's saying here, obviously, that breath was given to an image of the beast, and the image of the beast might even speak and might cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. Again, we need to remember this is apocalyptic language. This is figurative language. Now, I know that a lot of people picture, because of the Left Behind series, which I honestly do blame for a lot of people's eschatological views. My own eschatological views used to be, well, pretty much from the Left Behind series. So when they read this verse, they picture like a huge talking statue. Or some people might picture like they'll say, "Oh, well, it's talking about AI, or it's talking about a robot, or it's talking about a TV screen and people are watching that." No, this is confined to Jesus's generation. And so we have to ask ourselves, well, who is the beast? We have the sea beast and the land beast. And there are different, actually, there are different theories on who they are, but one of them I would definitely say is Old Covenant Israel. I believe is the land beast, because Israel was often known as the land. And then there's the sea beast that many people believe to be Rome, or in some cases Nero, actually as the sea beast. And there are some other opinions that the sea beast could also be, I believe, the Hasmonean dynasty. I'm not sure exactly, but it's another group of Jews that also could be the sea beast. I don't know too much about that yet. But it's actually a very interesting theory, but I'm not going to expound upon that today. But if you are looking at the sea beast as Nero or Rome, many people believe that what this is talking about, the image of the beast, is that Nero had coins printed up that had his image on them, and that people had to use those in order to buy those things, and that those who refused to worship him would not be allowed to use this money. And this is where a lot of the mark of the beast comes in. Again, I have heard a really interesting theory that is not like this on the mark of the beast. But if we are just for today's video, I think the most popular view is that this has to do with the coins that have Nero's image on them, that that they had to use those to buy and sell things at that time. Now, again, I trust what the Bible says, and I trust that it was the last hour, and that John said that this is, your brother in the tribulation. And I trust that Jesus said that these things would be happening soon. So I believe these things. And so I think it's really important that we understand that just because we do not understand exactly everything that happened at that time, because let's be honest, we've been conditioned with the opposite. We've been conditioned to be always forward looking. I didn't even learn about this history when I was in school, and someone mentioned that she did learn it in AP history. Well, I was also gifted AP. I did not learn about this. I did not learn about this in church. So for me, at least, this is a brand new area. However, it does make a lot of sense that the image would be talking about the coins with Nero. Now, I do want to go to another comment by the same person, because this really does touch on exactly what I'm talking about with the Left Behind series. If you have never heard of the Left Behind series, let's go there first. I'm sure that most of you have. The Left Behind series, written by Tim LaHaye and Jerry Jenkins. This is a very, very popular dispensationalist Christian series about the end times in the book of Revelation. And it is completely science fiction. If you read it, it is just out there. What they did was they took the book of Revelation and made everything hyper literal. Like everything was completely literal. So they've got these terrifying locusts with these horses' heads in it, and it's like you're reading a book that was written from a movie that you found on the Sci-Fi Channel. And indeed, Left Behind was made into a movie with Kirk Cameron, and then later another one with Nicolas Cage that really wasn't even Christian at all. But so a lot of Christians read these books and they get so wrapped up in them that they don't understand that they're fiction, and so they end up basing their eschatology on it. I mean, unfortunately, even some pastors do this. But anyway, here's another question. Again, I ask you, did helicopter gunships, which might appear to a first century prophet to resemble scorpions with wings sounding like many chariots, exist in 70 AD? Did the inhabitants of Jerusalem experience the business end of highly specialized, pinpoint accurate explosive munitions? Was Jerusalem razed to the ground in a matter of hours? And to that, I'm going to say not in a matter of hours, but it was razed to the ground, most definitely, including the temple. Did they need to watch their step lest they step on a mine and get blown to bits? Did the Romans deploy mustard gas or Agent Orange on them? Try to understand. John was writing about things without a point of reference for what he saw in his vision. That is why the book of Revelation appears to be somewhat symbolic. And it just says appears to be somewhat symbolic. No, it is symbolic. The book of Revelation is not talking about helicopter gunships. It's not talking about explosive munitions or mustard gas or mines. It is talking about things that happened in the first century. I mean, honestly, if you ask yourself this question, why would the first century believers to whom the book of Revelation was written, why would they be concerned with something that it was going to happen 2,000 years in the future? Why would the imminence be there for them? I'll tell you why. Because it was not written about something 2,000 years in the future. That is so important. So here is another passage from The Days of Vengeance. And David Chilton, when he wrote this, he was actually a partial preterist. I believe he was a post-millennialist at the time. I think that he did eventually become a full preterist before he passed away. But he just says this very well. The purpose of prophecy is not prediction, but evaluation of man's ethical response to God's word of command and promise. This is why Jonah's prophecy about Nineveh did not come true. Nineveh repented of its wickedness, and the calamity was averted. Like the other biblical writings, the book of Revelation is a prophecy with a specific covenantal orientation and reference. When the covenantal context of the prophecy is ignored, the message St. John sought to communicate is lost, and Revelation becomes nothing more than a vehicle for advancing the alleged expositor's eschatological theories. Let us consider a minor example. Revelation 9:16 tells us of a great army of horsemen, numbering myriads of myriads. In some Greek texts, this reads 2 myriads of myriads, and is sometimes translated 200 million. All sorts of fanciful and contrived explanations have been proposed for this. Perhaps the most well-known theory of recent times is Hal Lindsey's opinion that these 200 million troops are Red Chinese soldiers accompanied by other Eastern allies. It's possible that the industrial might of Japan will be united with Red China. For the first time in history, there will be a full invasion of the West by the Orient. Such fortune-telling may or may not be accurate regarding a coming Chinese invasion, but it tells us absolutely nothing about the Bible. To help put Lindsay's view into historical perspective, we will compare it to that of J.L. Martin, a 19th century preacher who, while sharing Lindsay's basic presuppositions about the nature and purpose of prophecy, reached the different and amusing conclusion that St. John's 200 millions represented the fighting force of the whole world of 1870. And before I go on, I just want to interject here that this is something that happens in every single generation. Every generation tries to write itself into the book of Revelation. Gary DeMar calls it newspaper exegesis. They're constantly checking the headlines to see, what is going to happen next in the book of Revelation in their time period. And they will insert things like the commenter, helicopter gunships into the book of Revelation or mustard gas when nothing like that is even alluded to. You have to understand the audience relevance in order to understand the book of Revelation. But I'm going to continue. Note Martin's shrewdly scientific Lindsay-like reasoning. We have a few more than 1 billion inhabitants on the earth, but of that billion, about 500 millions, one half, are females, leaving an average population of male inhabitants of about 500 millions, and of that number, about one half are minors, leaving about 250 millions of adult males on the earth at a time. But of that number of adult males, about one-fifth are superannuated or annuated, too old to fight. These are statistical facts. This leaves exactly John's 200 millions of fighting men on earth. And when we prove a matter mathematically, we think it is pretty well done. But Martin is just hitting his stride. He continues with his exposition, taking up the terrifying description of the soldiers in Revelation 9:17-19. The riders had breastplates of fire and of hyacinth and of brimstone, and the heads of the horses are like the heads of lions, and out of their mouths proceed fire and smoke and brimstone. A third of mankind was killed by these three plagues, by the fire and the smoke and the brimstone which proceeded out of their mouths. For the power of the horses is in their mouths and in their tails. For their tails are like serpents and have heads, and with them they do harm. And I just want to interject. Yeah, that's actually in the book of Revelation. There are horses that have serpent tails with heads. Anyway, Whereas modern apocalyptists view this in terms of lasers and missile launchers, Martin had a different explanation, one which was in keeping with the state of military art in his day, when Buffalo Bill was fighting Sioux Indians as chief of scouts for General Sheridan's 5th Cavalry. John is pointing to the modern mode of fighting on horseback, with the rider leaning forward, which to his sight, and to the sight of one looking on at a distance, would appear as the great mane of the lion, the man leaning on his horse's neck. Let me just interject here again. I know I keep interjecting, but notice the comment that I read said that it was talking about helicopter gunships, which might appear to a first century prophet to resemble scorpions with wings sounding like many chariots. And then here we have Martin saying that the rider leaning forward, which to his sight, meaning John's, and to the sight of one looking on at a distance, would appear as the great mane of the lion, the man leaning on his horse's neck. So if you notice, this is something that happens generation after generation after generation. People will insert whatever contemporary technology is happening at their time. They'll insert that into the book of Revelation, and then they will say, oh, well, see, this is what they thought they were looking at. They didn't have any other way to describe it, but this is what it really was. This is nothing new. This is happening every single generation. Continuing on, it says, he would, in fighting with firearms, have to lean forward to discharge his piece, lest he might shoot down his own horse that he was riding. In John's day, the posture was very different. Now I want to ask my friendly hearers if it is not as literally fulfilled before our eyes as anything can be? Are not all nations engaged in this mode of warfare? Do they not kill men with fire and smoke and brimstone? Do you not know that it is just ignited gunpowder? I'm going to remind you that this was written in 1870. Could an uninspired man in the last of the first century have told of this matter? And then Chilton says, unless we see the book of Revelation as a covenant document, if we insist on reading it primarily as either a prediction of 20th century nuclear weapons or a polemic against first century Rome, its continuity with the rest of the Bible will be lost. It becomes an eschatological appendix, a view of last things that ultimately has little to do with the message, purpose, and concerns of the Bible. Once we understand Revelation's character as a covenant lawsuit, however, it ceases to be a strange, weird book. And honestly, my friends, I'm just telling you, please keep audience relevance in mind when reading not just the book of Revelation, but reading the Bible in general. Now, regarding the Left Behind series, I found this very interesting piece that was written on Quora when I was looking things up, and someone asked the question, what do you think about the Left Behind novel series? And I thought this was pretty amusing. It said, I am fascinated by them, largely because of a long-running page-by-page reading, and exegesis really, by the American evangelical and blogger Fred Clark. He's written hundreds of thousands of words on them, which you can find on his blog and also as a collected ebook edition on Amazon. Briefly, I agree with him that they are not only extremely badly written and absurd, but that they are in fact evil, containing as they do an extremely bad set of moral and theological lessons. Here's a few points. Firstly, these books are portrayed as if they are the fictional expression of actual biblical prophecy. That is, leaving aside the exact details of the characters, the major geopolitical events are actually prophesied to happen. Tim LaHaye contends that by reading the Bible in a very convoluted way, patching together all kinds of random verses from widely separated books and chapters, he knows that the following things will happen. Israel will develop a magical agricultural technology that makes their land super fertile. As a result, Israel becomes hugely prosperous and makes peace with all its neighbors. Russia, with its allies in Ethiopia, launches an all-out nuclear attack on Israel, but none of the bombs cause any damage, and the attacking air force is utterly destroyed. Nobody can explain this. The rapture, which is never mentioned in the Bible, occurs, with all the real true Christians suddenly vanishing into heaven, but nobody realizes or believes that it's the rapture. Oh, all the children in the world vanish too. Life basically goes on as normal after this. Fire-breathing Old Testament prophets show up in Jerusalem and start toasting people. The Prime Minister of Romania, who is a peace-loving polyglot with tremendous charisma, persuades the UN to become a single world government, including everyone signing up to use a single currency, language, and religion. Everyone agrees but Israel. The world emperor, whatever he's calling himself, gets rid of all weapons, except those transferred to the one world government, and moves the world capital to Babylon. In response to uprisings by American militia groups, he nukes a lot of American cities, after which, again, things basically just go on as normal. I mean, it goes on like this. You are expected to believe that stuff like everyone agreeing to convert to a single religion is a thing that the Prime Minister of Romania would be able to swing. Sure, he's secretly the Antichrist, which I have to add is not mentioned a single time in the book of Revelation. But maybe we could go back to the bit where Israel transforms its economy by turning into a 90% smaller version of Kansas. Anyway, the prophecy stuff is all nonsense on stilts and based on really nutty, cranky, ahistorical reading of the Bible. What of the book says thrillers? Well, Tim LaHaye supplies the nutty theology, and Jerry Jenkins supplies the perfunctory thriller scaffolding, which reads like if Dan Brown had a severe concussion. It's full of evil bankers and politicians blowing people up with car bombs, but also hilariously features a fearless investigative reporter who never files a story about any of it and eventually goes to work for the Antichrist so he can keep an eye on him or something. None of the thriller plot points work at all. It's all really dumb and boring and so on. But the big thing is the politics and the morality. These books don't just grow out of the cranky religious cult of premillennial dispensationalism. They come from a fairly direct line of John Birch Society far right craziness. Therefore, there are some really twisted moral and political lessons in there. For example, the idea that the UN is already a kind of one world government to be hated and feared. Which, well, I don't like the UN. The idea that American militia groups who stockpile weapons to fight the Antichrist led UN New World Order are onto a good thing. The idea that because the Antichrist is deceptive, we should fear peacemakers and bleeding hearts of all kinds. If someone behaves like Christ, it's because they are probably the Antichrist. Vote for, I'm not going to say it, warmongers, suggests Left Behind. Well, I mean, I definitely would not suggest voting for warmongers either. But again, I have to say, Antichrist's not in the book of Revelation. So, the sense of glee with which it treats the people who are left behind, the sense in which the chief pleasure of the books is to enjoy the secret membership of the club that gets raptured and can point and laugh at the unrighteous. Deeply ugly sexist morality in which Studley pilot Rayford Steele is a complete peg to flight attendant Hattie. Is it Hattie? I forget. And who ends up as the literal, well, I'm not going to, even though it's in the Bible, I'm not going to say it. I have children, WHORE of Babylon. And we know who that is. That is, that's Old Covenant Israel, specifically Jerusalem. An offensive take on salvation as something that is achieved by saying a magic prayer, but not by any kind of works. Nobody in the Antichrist tribulation force lifts a finger to help anyone, even once they are saved, preferring to burrow into the basement of a church, read the Bible a lot, and in several cases actually go and work for the Antichrist. If you're not in the tribulation club, you don't deserve help. So I just found this summary a bit amusing. Um, but yeah, I hope, I don't even know if this will answer this person's questions, but the fact of the matter is that the book of Revelation wasn't written about us. Every single generation thinks the book of Revelation was written about them, and it wasn't. The book of Revelation was written about Jesus' generation. He promised in Matthew 24:34, truly I tell you, this generation shall not pass away until all these things take place. And then Jesus, in Revelation 1 and 22, bookends the book of Revelation saying that he is coming soon. So soon means soon. So there's no need to insert, like huge, massive AI talking images or helicopter gunships or mustard gas, because that's not what the book of Revelation was about. It was a local covenant judgment on Israel. That's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one down below. And if you like my work and would like to become a channel member, I will leave a link in the description box for that as well. Or you can just click on it right on my channel page. And I hope you have a great day.